This fiqh is going to be from the Maliki Madhab, and the book that we're using in order to teach these classes is known as Ashalul Masalik, which is a very advanced book, alhamdulillah, in the Maliki Madhab. And so really, if you guys can pay attention and really just kind of gather these rulings and memorize them, you'll become very, very confident when it comes to the fiqh of fasting. And likewise with all the different chapters that we've done. But you'll have clarity, not just for yourself, but when also people come to you with questions. But before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about the madhahib. What exactly are the madhahib? Because people get very, very confused when we talk about madhahib. The best way that I've found to explain it is using the analogy of food. Now, for the students that have been here for previous chapters, you know exactly what I'm about to say. I want you to just imagine a table of raw ingredients. Maybe some raw chicken, maybe some olive oil, some salt, some cucumber, some tomatoes, just a table of raw ingredients. If you're someone that has no idea how to cook and you try and cook something with those ingredients, you might catch salmonella. You might actually end up destroying your body because you don't know what you're doing. You don't know how to cook. Really, the befitting thing to do is to wait for a chef or someone who knows how to cook to come and make you a valid dish that you can eat and enjoy and get nutrition from, correct? Well, this analogy is going to explain to you madhahib. Essentially, the ingredients that are on the table is the Quran and Sunnah. The layman who doesn't know how to cook cannot just go to the Quran and Sunnah and extract rulings by themselves. You cannot just go to the translation of an Arabic language and you don't know how to speak Arabic and extract rulings yourself. You cannot just go to these ingredients and try and understand them when there are things like abrogation involved, or things like qiyas, or things like, things which are general, things which are specific. You can't do that. You need to have specialist knowledge. And the cooks in this situation are the scholars. And so the scholars, they come and they use the Quran and the Sunnah to cook up different meals, if you like, which are different rulings, okay? And this gives rise to the 4 different madhahib. All madhahib are correct because they've all used the same ingredients, the Quran and Sunnah. And the entire ummah has accepted these madhahib for 1400 years, right? And so you have Maliki, you have Hanbali, you have Hanafi, you have Shafi'i, right? And so one might ask the question, Tayyib, why is there difference of opinion? Well, it's a mercy from Allah, without a shadow of a doubt. Because we don't have the same robotic actions that we do day in, day out as an ummah. We have flexibility in the way that we practice Islam. It's a mercy, right? But it's also a test to see if we're going to be at each other's necks, attacking each other, saying my opinion is correct, your opinion is wrong, and so on and so forth, right? And so now let's make this very personal to you. What if you face an opinion or a difference of opinion? What should you do? Because some people might say stick to a madhab. Some people might say otherwise. Without a doubt, the best thing to do is to stick to one madhab because it helps you prevent confusion. It gives you clarity. You're like, okay, this is what I've studied. This is the madhab that I've, gone to. So I'm going to apply this. But if you, for example, learn of a difference of opinion, or if you're in the Shafi'i household, for example, right, and you've not studied Shafi'i rulings very deeply, but you've managed to get hold of a course like this where you're studying the Maliki madhabs very deeply, okay? If you're presented with a difference of opinion, it has to be from a teacher, by the way. You can't just say, oh, I'm Shafi'i, and then take rulings from Google. It doesn't work like that. You have to actually have studied it and taken it from a teacher. If you have a difference of opinion from your teachers, okay, then the scholars have differed. There's 3 opinions essentially as to what you can do, okay? The first opinion, if you're faced with a difference of opinion from your teachers, is that you choose the easier option. Why? Because the scholars who follow this opinion, they say that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was given 2 options, he would choose the easier of the 2. The second opinion, if you wish to follow it, is that you choose the harder option, because the scholars who follow this option, or this opinion, they say that the thing that's harder is typically closer to the truth. And the third opinion of scholars is that you can choose whichever opinion to follow that you like. Why? Because you are a layman, right? You've not studied Islam, but the scholars who've cooked up these opinions, they have studied Islam all their lives. And so you can trust them from that perspective and go with their expertise because you do not have your expertise. So if you want to choose the easier or harder one, it's up to you, you see? The only caveat that I will mention, which will carry through to all the rest of the fiqh classes that we do, is that if I say that this is a weak opinion, okay, then you follow the stronger one. But if I say, oh, there's just a difference of opinion, then you can follow any one of these three opinions that I've mentioned from the scholars, where you can choose the easiest, the hardest, or choose whichever one you like. Does that make sense? And so that's why if you're from a Shafi'i household or a Hanafi household or whatever have you, or you've studied Shafi'i to some degree, or you've studied Hanafi to some degree, you can still benefit from this program. You can still benefit from the Maliki Madhab. طيب? Okay, now we're ready to start, inshallah, with the fiqh of fasting. And I'm sure you're going to love this one because it's very relevant. Just in a few days, we're going to have Ramadan. Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. And I hope you all make the most of it, inshallah. طيب. Sawm, which means fasting. What does that mean linguistically? Let's start with definitions before we build on this, inshallah. Linguistically speaking, when you say sawm or fasting, it means to hold back or to suppress, okay? And so when we use this word in the Islamic context, fasting or sawm is an act of worship where we hold back or suppress the desires of the stomach and the desires of the private area between Fajr and sunset. You see how beautiful that definition is? It kind of gives you a very rough, brief, holistic understanding of what fasting is, right? So now that we have that definition out of the way, it will help you, inshallah, moving forward in these classes. And so the very first set of rulings we're going to talk about is how do we know when Ramadan starts and when Ramadan ends? Okay. So the month before Ramadan is known as the month of Sha'ban. Sha'ban is the month that comes before Ramadan. Now Sha'ban is either 29 days or 30 days long. And so the way that we know Ramadan has started is by one of two ways, okay? The first way is by seeing the new moon on the night of the 29th day. Because we're talking about the lunar calendar here, right? So once you sight the moon on the night of the 29th day, that means Ramadan is starting. If you don't see the moon on that night, 30 days passes, and then you know Ramadan is next because Sha'ban can't be more than 30 days long, you see? And so that's generally how it works. But the question is, who is the one that confirms that the moon has been sighted? The scholars have said that if you want to confirm that the moon has been sighted, it must be seen in the same area by two trustworthy males. This is the boundary set by the Maliki Madhab. And trustworthy means that these two people must not commit any major sins, and they must have few minor sins, and they even leave the mubah, which means something that's allowed Islamically, just to protect their reputation. But alternatively, it can be a group of 5 people minimum, whether they're trustworthy or not, but they need to be known not to lie a lot, essentially. So this is kind of the boundary of who can see the moon, who can report that they've seen the moon, and then when it's accepted by the authorities or not, okay? But there is a unique situation that I want to mention. So now you understand that it's either the 29th night, you see the moon, and then it's Ramadan, or it's 30 days and you don't see the moon, and then it's Ramadan. There is a unique situation where sometimes the weather conditions are not very good. It's extremely cloudy on the night of the 29th, or it's extremely foggy, or maybe there's a lot of rain or something. And so because of that, the sky is completely blocked and you don't know if the moon is there or not, okay? This is a very unique situation and you guys need to pay attention. This day is known as Yawm al-Shak, which is the day of doubt. This day has specific rulings where when you look up on the night of the 29th and there's a lot of clouds, no one can see if there's a moon or not. There's specific rulings that come to this. So if the clouds and the fog disappear before Fajr, perfect. You've seen the moon, Ramadan starts. But let's say the clouds, they disappear after Fajr. And then when the people look, they see that the moon is sighted. That means it's Ramadan. So what should the people do then? Listen carefully. Whether you guys have eaten after Fajr or not, you have to start fasting anyway until the end of the day. And when Ramadan finishes, you have to make that day up that you just fasted. Even if you ate after Fajr, even if you didn't, you have to hold, okay, and not eat anything or drink anything and fast as if you're fasting and still make that day up after Ramadan. And if you break your fast on purpose after knowing this ruling, then you still have to make that day up, but you also have to do something known as a kafara on top of that as well. And we're going to talk about exactly what a kafara is, don't worry about it, but for now just know that if you break your fast, even though you might have ate after Fajr, it doesn't matter. If you break your fast knowing that Yawm al-Shak turned out to be Ramadan, then you have to make that day up and do something known as the kafara, and we're going to talk about exactly what that is soon. Okay, so now you have a new concept known as Yawm al-Shak. And so that summarizes how we know that Ramadan begins. So how do we know Ramadan ends? Okay, pretty much everything that I've mentioned applies to how Ramadan ends too. Because Ramadan is either 29 days or 30 days. So that means either 29 days of Ramadan pass and the moon is sighted that evening, meaning Eid is the next day, or the moon is not sighted, okay, and 30 days passed and Eid is the next day. Or the third situation, the moon is sighted in the evening of the 29th, but after Fajr because it was cloudy. Same situations as last time. If it's cloudy and you don't know if it's Eid or not, and then Fajr comes and you start fasting, but it's like there's still doubt in the day, what do you do if the clouds go and if the rain goes or whatever, the fog goes, and you find out that actually the moon has been sighted and everyone's fasting? In that case, it becomes wajib. You have to break your fast and celebrate Eid, because it is actually haram to fast on the first day of Ramadan, of Eid even, sorry. You see? It's haram to fast on the first day of Eid. So as you can see, everything we mentioned for the beginning of Ramadan with regards to Sha'ban applies to the end of Ramadan too. And let me just make something very clear. These rulings are so that you guys know the technicalities. No one's asking you guys to go to climb the tallest building and look into the distance to see if you can find the moon. No one's asking you to do that, okay? This is just so you know the technicalities of how things work, and it's mentioned in the books of fiqh. But obviously, if you have announcements from your local masjid or whatever have you, then you can follow that, inshallah. But at least you know if you're, you wanted to know yourself, or if other people ask you, inshallah. The last thing we're going to speak about today, nice and short lesson, inshallah, before we go into it tomorrow. The last thing we're going to speak about is, can we fast on the day before Ramadan? If it's cloudy or foggy, meaning this day is Yawm al-Shak, the madhabs have differed if you can fast or not. But in the Maliki madhab, it allows you to fast if it's either a nafil. So let's say, for example, it's either a Monday or a Thursday. You know, the Yawm al-Shak, it's Monday or Thursday. Or it's one of the white days. Or maybe you want to do qada as well, make up a day from the previous Ramadan that you missed. Or maybe you swore an oath that you're going to fast on that day. Any of these reasons, you can fast if it's Yawm al-Shak. If it's cloudy and people don't know yet if it's Ramadan the next day or not, you can fast that, no problem, in the Maliki madhab. But the only fast you cannot do, and I'm sure you guys will have this question if I don't say this, is can we set an intention and say to ourselves, Ya Allah, I'm going to fast tomorrow in case it's Ramadan tomorrow. If it's Ramadan tomorrow, then I've made the intention, and then inshallah it will be count and everything will be fine. This is not accepted in the Maliki madhab. You cannot fast with a doubtful intention for Ramadan. It has to be a firm intention. And so you would still need to make up that day even if you make that intention. But if you guys fast a nafil, so let's say it's Monday or Thursday on Yawm al-Shak, or it's one of the white days, or you swore an oath, or you want to make up a day from the previous Ramadan, and it turns out to be Ramadan, then your fast is nullified, because you cannot fast a nafil on a farad day, which is Ramadan, and then you'd have to do it after Ramadan finishes. So now you have a good portion of rulings to start with, inshallah, and that will be it for today's lesson. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Let's take some questions, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum.